Hello and welcome to week for the Apigee Quickstart sessions, where we'll be having a look at some of the use cases that sit around the Apigee API management platform. When we think about the cloud, we often picture it as one centralized location where all of our data is stored and analyzed, but that's not where the data originally comes from. The data is created by us in our own environments through our interactions, our customers' touchpoints, chatbots, websites, our partners' ecosystems with equipment like smartwatches and even the IoT devices used in factories. In today's world, we have a variety of connected experiences across different channels, and the line that connects all of these experiences is the API. So APIs are the core of the value chain when it comes to delivering great digital services to our customers. So one thing you might want to think about is, what business are you really in? And today the rise of APIs make that question even tougher to answer. APIs are the windows to new ecosystems and allow companies to expand into markets that they may have never previously considered. APIs then allow businesses to monetize data, forge profitable partnerships, and open up new pathways for innovation and growth. Central to this capability is the concept of API productization. So API productization is the means by which we package up the APIs that we want to make available, and we make them easy to understand and easy to consume by our consumers. This of course makes it easier for our consumers to utilize our APIs, which therefore unlocks the value of those APIs. It also is a means to unlock the reuse of our APIs. If we have a set of well-defined, well-understood API products that represent our capabilities, it's very easy for us to use those across the different processes that require that type of capability. So we create our API products and then we publish those into our marketplace, into our developer portal. So our developer portal acts as the showcase for our API products. And the key goal we're trying to solve for here is that we want to make it as easy as possible for those consumers to identify and discover the APIs that we want to make available, and to onboard and be able to start consuming our APIs. And we do that by using things like seamless onboarding processes with low barriers to entry, with providing things like sandboxes and playgrounds that enable our consumers to get hands-on with our APIs. Potentially also, if we are directly monetizing our APIs, includes the ability for us to present and sell those rate plans that are associated to those API traffic. So that gives us the context. Now let's dive in and look at some specific use cases that exist in the API management space. So of course, generative AI and the use of large language models is incredibly prevalent at the moment. It's the hot new topic. And of course, there are therefore several use cases that fit around the usage of these models in an API context. In fact, we'd say there's no AI without API. So what we see here is we have Apigee and API management acting as that interface between the applications and the services that we want to provide to our consumers and these generative AI capabilities that sit at the back end. This then enables us to solve for a whole bunch of problems that we would otherwise have. So it enables us to handle the productization of our capabilities. So much as we would talk about API productization, we can now talk about AI productization, and this is exactly the same core concept. It can help with cost control. So of course these AI models are expensive, so we can use Apigee to act as a layer in front. We can do things like semantic caching of queries, so we can understand when two queries or two prompts are semantically equivalent, and we can serve those responses back from cache rather than making an expensive call to our large language model. It's also cost control in terms of understanding the charging metrics that are associated to those large language models. So typically these are token based, and so having something that can sit in front, that can understand our token usage and can apply quotas to our different consumers of these capabilities is super important for effecting that cost control. Of course, analytics, so our ability to understand that traffic, to understand the value that we're generating from that traffic, to understand that we're getting a good return on investment from these potentially expensive capabilities. Then, of course, security. So how are we protecting ourselves against things like prompt injection and various adversarial attacks? How are we ensuring that we are not allowing for the exfiltration of sensitive data, or indeed having our language models responding with inappropriate data and inappropriate answers to our consumers? Apigee can act as an orchestration layer sitting in front of these models that can integrate to things like Google Cloud's Model Armor product, which is able to analyze both the prompts and the responses and score those across a whole bunch of different dimensions to establish the likelihood of that being an adversarial prompt or potentially a prompt that is inappropriate for the use cases that we would wish to deliver. So in exactly the same way that we would see traditional APIs and traditional API management as that API management layer providing this horizontal capability of covering off all of these cross-cutting concerns, it's exactly the same with our AI use cases, just there's some nuances there in terms of the specifics of how we interact with these large language models. Next, we'll look at the use cases around data platform. So data platforms are a pretty big thing these days. Most organizations, most enterprises either have something already set up for this or are in the process of building out these data platforms. So this is providing capabilities to bring together disparate data sources, to cleanse that data, to essentially assemble a valuable data set from those different data sources. API management then has a key role in this in terms of leveraging those data assets. So you see it on the right hand side of this stage, right hand side of this slide, we've got the Apigee layer that is facing off to actually enable the different consumption channels for this data. So that then provides us flexibility in terms of enabling that data to be consumed by the various consumers who would like to use it. It also provides us capabilities to monitor and potentially monetize the usage of that data. So this then truly delivering on the value proposition that sits behind the inception of these data platforms. And of course, quite often these data platforms will have been created to solve for internal business needs, but quite often that can then lead to the realization that these are valuable data sets that can actually be directly monetized when offered to third parties. An API platform is of course the ideal way to achieve that. Next we'll look at a very technical focused use case, which is the usage of Apigee to accelerate migrations. So if we think about one of the core challenges that we have with any type of migration, it's often the fact that we have a bunch of different consumers of that capability, and of course any migration of those capabilities, those services, needs to be done in a way that is not going to adversely impact those consumers of those services. So by having an API management layer sat in front, what that gives us is a mediation capability so that we can seamlessly switch out whatever sits behind that layer and do that in a manner that is completely transparent and does not affect those consumers of those services. So this actually then unlocks our ability to accelerate in terms of these migrations. This can then lead us to a world where we have hybrid applications. So maybe we have some mix of cloud native capabilities and some mix of existing legacy, potentially on-premises capabilities. Through a single surface, we can then sit in front of both of these types of architecture. We can intelligently route between them, and we can also do things like blue-green setups, where as we're in process of potentially migrating from on-prem to the cloud, we can, before we fully turn off those on-prem systems, we can route some of the traffic to the new cloud infrastructure and reassure ourselves that everything is healthy and it is working in the way that we want. Of course, we can also talk about Apigee in terms of various new business models that can be used associated to our APIs. So here's an example from a leading ticket sales company. So this is an example where the value creation evolved over time. So they started out with their traditional business model of selling tickets. The development teams would help create the applications that allowed their sales reps to sell the tickets online and fans to go to their web and mobile apps to purchase. However, they recognised that competition was increasing and consumers were more connected than ever and had many choices. So they had to rethink their strategy. In addition to their app development teams, the company started by adding API skill sets to build out their APIs. They started converting their back-end service that enabled ticket browsing and purchasing into APIs. Just by adding APIs in the middle, then allowed IT to have a loosely coupled architecture. This two-tier architecture separated their front end from their back-end services, with APIs as the intermediary, allowing their front-end teams to release and update the experience more often, and enable the services team to keep up without incurring a long regression test cycle. This was their first value realization. But they quickly realized that the APIs were then also reusable for external sites. What was previously APIs for their website can become externally available APIs. Fans weren't just going to the ticket company's website, of course. They were browsing sport websites, talking about events on social media, browsing local venue websites, and looking for deals at big box retail stores. Rather than forcing the users to switch from site to site, the ticket sales company needed to be where the fan was in the moment of that user's experience. But they realised they couldn't just build APIs and expect partners to just pick them up. They worked on building a partnership at the business level one by one. As a result, they established these partnerships and started seeing more traffic and transactions as their ecosystem had substantially multiplied beyond their own apps. Their APIs became the conduit in which their business transactions flowed. This became their second major value realization. Because their APIs helped them decouple their back-end from the application experience layer, they were also able to innovate more themselves. By adding Google's dialogue flow, they were able to use speech recognition and conversation technology to make ordering by voice easier on a completely new channel inside the home. Now a third value has been realized. They didn't just stop there. In addition to generating additional demand from consumers, the company also started expanding the supplier side. With their digital platform, they allowed suppliers of other types of tickets to augment their own ticket inventory, creating a new business model where the company became a hub and reseller of tickets to events and venues of inventory that was entirely owned by other providers. Next, let's have a look at use cases around microservices. So, this is quite a common pattern, and what we see here is that we have a microservices layer that sits at the back end, so onto the right hand side of this slide, and then we have an API management layer that sits in front. So what this then enables is we've got a modernized microservices based infrastructure, which by the way will likely have a whole bunch of internal API traffic going on inside it. That API traffic is what we would typically consider east-west or service mesh traffic, and if management is required on that traffic, typically we would recommend using some type of service mesh management technology such as Istio to handle that. For an API or an API management use case, then typically what we're concerned about is the capabilities exposed from that microservices layer and making that available to different consumers. So our API management layer sits at the front, provides all of the controls and the visibility and the security that's required to enable those capabilities exposed from that microservices tier to be exposed to our consumers. Now let's look at supply chain and manufacturing. So in a traditional supply chain use case, we kind of view the world as a pipe. So we have this link from the supplier to the producer to the distributor to the customer. Each is a linked step in the chain, and we kind of have to plan for every interaction that sits along this chain. When we move that to a digital ecosystem platform, And this becomes a completely integrated ecosystem that is then fully transparent to all of the players involved. And therefore we can make it a lot more flexible, we can execute on it a lot more quickly, and we can, in effect, deliver more value from this supply chain and gain more control and insight and visibility. Finally, I want to leave you with some food for thought. So when we look at the spectrum of the different opportunities and the associated business value from APIs, then we can see that this exists across the spectrum. Some companies build their APIs as just purely an integration play. These are the traditional concerns of IT cost and efficiency as the primary business case. This typically results in the retirement of redundant systems and maintenance costs. Next, in the middle, we see that some companies build their case on APIs as a route to greater speeds and business agility. This typically means partnering with a line of business to demonstrate improvement in their KPIs as a result of faster speed to market. And finally, on the right-hand side, some companies will build the business case more broadly by demonstrating the value of APIs as a platform and ecosystem. This typically means partnering with multiple lines of business and demonstrating improvement in KPIs as well as better strategic positioning at a firm level in the form of new business models and channels. Wherever possible, try and move to the right across this spectrum, as that will demonstrate broader impact in terms of your business case. It's really the far right hand side of that, this ecosystem play, where we want every one of our customers to get to, as that's where they will realise the maximal value from their approach. And there are a couple of different ways that we can think about the maturity that is associated to our API programs. First of these is funding. So of course, it could be the case that there's no funding available for production API projects. It could be that funding is available, but it has to be done at an individual project level, and sort of have to go to the well every time that it's required. Could be that you have funding mechanisms built into those individual projects, but again, of course, that needs to be done on a case-by-case basis. Or it could be that you are fully mature and you have a funded company-wide initiative to build out the API platform. So our viewpoint, of course, is that this is these are steps of maturity, and certainly the North Star should be getting to that far right box where you've actually centrally funded and built this company-wide initiative. That's going to drive massive efficiency gains, and it's going to enable you to really start unlocking those use cases on those powerful ecosystem play use cases around your APIs. Another way we can look at the maturity is in terms of metrics. So how is the effectiveness of your API programs being measured? Again, this can fit across 4 different steps. So at the lowest level of maturity is, of course, no measurement at all. Second step up is to have some metrics, but for them to be very IT centric. So things just such as the number of APIs that we have, or the kind of cost associated to them. Next, the third tier on this is there are metrics, but they are now API consumption focused. So how many different consuming developers are there that are using our APIs? What are the number of apps and experiences that have been built? And then the final level, or the optimal level of maturity, is where we're really using our measurements to understand the business impact that our APIs have. So this then becomes metrics like revenue, speed to market, for those industries where it makes sense, net promoter score. So what does our customer satisfaction look like, and how is that being affected and delivered from our API program? So bringing this together, one thing that's absolutely critical to success is to make sure that you measure the right things and that you also fund the right things. So you need to measure and fund these KPIs that matter. We can look at program funding. So these then fit into the KPIs around our execution. So how quickly are we able to get APIs to market? How quick is it for a potential consumer of our API to be able to gain access and start utilizing our API? What's the quality of our APIs? So what does it look like from a latency perspective? How compliant is it with our security processes? Next, in the middle tier, we can look at the IT funding, where we're mainly focused in terms of the adoption KPIs. So what's our reuse rate? What percentage of our APIs are used for multiple use cases? This is a really critical metric to understand in terms of your overall health of your API strategy. What's our business area adoption? So what percentage of our apps are actually built on top of APIs? What's our capability coverage? So what percentage of our capabilities are exposed via APIs? And then finally, third-party adoption. So how many third-party partners do we have engaging into our API ecosystem? And finally, on the far right, we see the business funding and the value KPIs that sit behind that. So what's the business value of our traffic? What does it lead to in terms of new business? What's the revenue we're generating, both direct and indirect from our API traffic? So direct might be from API monetization, where potentially we are directly charging for access to our APIs. Indirect might be where we're using APIs to sell our capabilities or services or grow our business in other ways. And then also, what are our cost savings? So how much time and energy and money are we saving in terms of having optimized processes, in terms of minimizing development time, in terms of being able to consolidate the different systems that we are operating. And then to kind of make that real, so what we might see fitting into this is execution KPIs showing the cadence of our releases, resolution time, adoption KPIs that show the footprint we've got across our partner and application and developer landscape, and then value KPIs showing the percentage of our business that is now generated from our API channels, the productivity improvements that we're seeing, the differential in terms of time it's taking for people to onboard onto our APIs. So, thank you for your time today. To summarise, what we've looked at is that the APIs are absolutely central to the health of modern business. They're the lifeblood of how every one of our technical capabilities hangs together. And what we've also seen is that there are a bunch of different use cases, both technical focused and business focused, that are unlocked from APIs. So everything from the usage of generative AI models through to the delivery of supply chain capabilities. And then finally, we've had a little look at some of the key levers that businesses who adopt this technology need to focus in on, particularly in terms of what they choose to measure and what they choose to fund. And what we've also seen is how those two topics are related together. So, thank you for your time. I hope you found this useful and informative.